we should.
You know, you can edit too, of course.
Yeah, I can edit. I mean, again, for the most part, I want it to be pretty loose, kind of what we just did, but recording.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So first of all, I mean, how was your day today?
Let me say, well, it was good. We attended a funeral of a neighbor of ours, so it was a beautiful funeral. It was very moving, but he died, what I'd consider very young, at 68, unfortunately. Wow. On Good Friday, his wife was out with their grandson at a movie, came home and found him on the floor. Gosh. So he passed away very quickly.
What did he die of?
Well, I guess it was like a major heart attack or a stroke. She said that he had had issues, but they were under control. He was going to the doctor quite frequently and keeping it under control, and it just happened.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
Do you worry about that kind of thing?
No. Well, since I've already reached 81, no, not so much. I feel like I'm in good health. And, they talk about the youth think that they're never going to die. I don't think any of us think, well, this is going to be the end. They're always hoping for a longer life. There's more you want to do and experience and enjoy. So, no, I don't overly dwell on it. No.
I think we talked about this at Easter, but do you have bucket list items for what you want to do before you die?
Yes, I guess. I've done a lot, I think, in my life. I've experienced a lot. Certainly, I'd like to do more travel than we've done in the past, both Monty and I. But no, I'm pretty satisfied with what I've done with life. I don't know if there's a bucket list. Yeah, I keep thinking about that. Well, maybe I should do a bucket list because it's later than you think. I don't know. We had been doing a considerable amount of travel up to COVID. And once COVID hit, everything, of course, came to a standstill. And we've never really gotten back from that cutting back. So we're trying to do that now.
You never kind of recovered from not going anywhere, pretty much.
Right. So other than travel, as far as, no, I guess I'm satisfied.
You're pretty set. Yeah,
pretty set.
I'd say you have a pretty good life.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, nothing major or outstanding about my life, but it was a very comfortable life, been a very satisfying life. The one major thing in my life, or one of the major things in my life, was of course the war in Vietnam, or the American War. I was drafted into the Army and participated in that, and it was an eye-opener for me.
Yeah. What was that like? Just, can you almost paint a picture of when the war first started and you heard about the draft and you got kind of registered, and then, I don't know if you're comfortable with doing that, but.
Yeah, I guess I am. As far as the draft, I had just graduated from college, and of course you get the letter, greetings, and you know where the letter is come in those days, because, though they're talking about reinstituting the draft again, but it was, you knew what was coming up. You had to go to the draft board and register and the whole 9 yards, and then you're called in for a physical, and I always assumed that, well, they'll never send me to Vietnam. What use would I be? I've never even handled a gun or a rifle or anything like that. But Uncle Sam had plans, and so I was eventually sent to Vietnam. And it was an eye-opener. It was a first exposure to third world and how the rest of the world lives. And, we take for granted everything that we have in the West, in the United States, certainly. And when I saw what the rest of the world lived on and built their lives around, it was quite an eye-opener. It was difficult, of course, because it was perhaps the most unpopular war, other than what we're experiencing today. but it was very, very unpopular, and I was not totally sold on the idea of what we were there for, and making the world safer for democracy or whatever the reasoning was. But I survived it. I was fortunate. I didn't experience a lot of the trauma that other guys had, and I guess I trusted in God. I trusted that well, whatever's going to happen will happen, and basically in God's hand. I remember one time I used to say the night office, small little prayer book that I have, and I used to say it faithfully every night, and I take the little booklet out. I had it memorized by that point, but I would use the booklet. And one of the guys said to me, one of the fellow soldiers, to me, "Hey, Barrett, if you think asking him to get you out of here, he's going to do it, it's not going to happen." I said, "No, that's not what I'm doing. I'm thanking him for everything that he's given me in my life up to this point." And it sounds very pious, but that was my thinking. That was the feeling I had at that time. And so, fortunately, I survived.
Yeah, very, very fortunately. So how long were you in there for?
Let's see. Initially, you were sent for a year, and then you would come home, and if whatever you have left of your 2 years of service, you'd serve in the United States. By the time I had gotten to the point of serving a year, I was in the rear. I was on a base. I was a casualty clerk at the time. I wasn't out in the field. So the thought of going back to the United States and still serving a small portion of my time in the United States Army, I thought was very rinky-dink, and I didn't want to have any part of that. So I extended for about 3 months to, if you had less than, I forget how many months to serve, you didn't have to serve it back in the United States. So I extended, and I was released from Vietnam for my...
When was that? Like, what do you remember?
Oh gosh, let's see. I went in, it was 69. I can tell you when I came home, and you can look it up because it was the same day that the first man landed on the moon.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that was July in 69.
I forget. I'm terrible with dates.
Yeah,
my mom would know.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. She would know.
So okay, so you're flying home. You get off the plane. And I'm sure everyone kind of knows, okay, well, this is the day that we're going to have the first human being on the moon. But can you just talk about your experience of, say, coming back to the United States and getting because you talked about third world country, and you were in the third world for almost a year, over a year?
Over a year,
Over a year.
A year and 3 months.
So how was that for you, as in transitioning from the real world, not real world, from America,
the third world to the real,
back to America?
Well, I can tell you when I landed in Seattle when I was coming back from Vietnam, and it was amazing. I was on the base, and we were being discharged, and you had to go through all this rigmarole that the Army is great for. Yeah. You had to have a steak dinner, number one, which took place, in my case, at 3 a.m. in the morning. That was followed by having your official portrait taken by a photographer in a tent setup, which was insanity. Moore wanted a formal portrait of myself at that point. I weighed 98 pounds.
Oh, wait, you weighed 98 pounds?
Yeah, I had lost an enormous...
How were you alive? Like, what are you, like 6'1"? How tall are you?
I was 6'2", but I'm probably more 6 foot now.
Oh my gosh. So
yeah, it was the combination of eating sea rations, which were absolutely disgusting, and the heat, and being out in the jungles, and trekking around the jungles all the time. So I just lost an awful lot of weight. But anyway, so I came back to Seattle, and I remember standing in base in a line early in the morning. I could feel the sun coming up behind me, and I just turned around, and there was Mount Rainier. It looked like a child drawing of a mountain with the snow cap on the top and the sun hitting it. It was the most magnificent sight to have seen at that point. But, it was it was surreal to come back to the United States after, even for a short period of a year and 3 months or whatever it was, of being away. I remember the morning I was flying home, I went to the cafeteria or to a restaurant, or like a small coffee shop, to have breakfast. And I sat down at the counter, and they put this plate of food with all the utensils and the napkins and the glasses and so forth. And I just sort of freaked out.
Yeah.
It just was, wait a minute, we've been eating out of cans in Vietnam, and it, it was an adjustment coming back to civilization. But, certainly other guys had a more horrible situation in coming back wounded.
I can even imagine that.
Emotionally disturbed and PTSD and all of it. And fortunately, I had none of it.
Wow. Yeah. Good. So do you remember, let's see where to start. What was the first memory you could really recall of
my childhood?
Of your life in general?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I don't know. I can't answer that question, and it's a common question.
Yeah.
And most people can say, "Oh, I remember being in my crib and having a party and my crying and not." I don't have early memories. I don't know why.
Huh. What was growing up like? Like, where did you grow up, and how many siblings did you have? And so on and so forth?
I grew up in Jamaica Plain. My parents owned a 3-family house. My brother and my 2 sisters and I grew up in the house. My parents are from Ireland, or immigrants to this country, and deeply religious, and we were brought up in the Catholic faith. We were sent to parochial schools and grammar school and high school, and we went to church every Sunday. We said the rosary every night. A very typical Irish Catholic upbringing. But one of the things I remember about growing up, and we grew up in the city of Boston, and it was, an inner city neighborhood, all 3-family houses. But at the end of our street was Franklin Park, which was, to me, the greatest gift you could have given me, because I was constantly out in the park. We would go there in the wintertime, sledding all afternoon long. Right after we got out of school, we'd go up to the park to sled, and I just explored the whole park. I knew the Franklin Park as well as I knew the back of my hand. It was a big draw for me to be out in nature, and it's funny when you think of when I came home from Vietnam, I said, I don't want to so much as go on a picnic again, because I had been out in the jungle, trooping around, but nature has a draw for me. I just love being outdoors. Excuse me.
Do you think that, I'm sure, but that kind of imagination with nature and with the outdoors and the kind of nature boy aspect of growing up has kind of lost in previous generations?
On the current generation?
Yeah, because I'm thinking, fortunately my parents didn't throw a computer in front of my face constantly.
Right.
And I was able to have that, but a lot of my friends didn't. They were just glued to their screens, and their imagination was watching this game play out. And the only avenues for adventure would be exactly what this is programmed to, basically.
Right. I guess it's gotten worse. I'd say it started in my generation.
With the TV?
With the television.
Yeah.
Anytime, I remember growing up in the neighborhood in Jamaica Plain where we grew up, a lot of 3-family houses, a lot of kids in every apartment. So there was an enormous number of kids to play with. But TV was there. TV was a draw, and many kids would want to stay in on Saturday mornings and watch the cartoons on television. I never wanted any part of it. I don't know why, but I wanted to be outside. I remember going one day going over to a neighbor's house and knocking on the door to see if they could come out and play, and it was raining. And Mother said, "Oh, Jackie, isn't it raining out?" And I said, "Well, a little." And I couldn't understand why would rain keep you from being outside, but I don't know. But your question, is it more prevalent today? I guess it is. As I say, it started the television era was when we started growing up. When we first grew up, my memories of my younger days, my brother and I, laying on the rug in the living room and listening to the radio. We didn't have television. Yeah. And one of our neighbors got a TV, and that was the first TV in the whole neighborhood. And we'd all go over and watch TV at their house. But it was a different world.
Yeah. So you said that television wasn't exactly a big draw for you when you were younger, but it
still isn't.
Still isn't. You're not glued to the TV scrolling Netflix all the time. But I definitely know that you love literature, you love stories, and you love the great English writers and so on and so forth. Where did that fascination start? Did it start with your mom? Because I know she was very into that.
My mother, yes. She was a reader, certainly. I think I think it was through school and also through the library, the Jamaica Plain branch of Boston Public Library. It used to have story hour, and they still do. But I have a vivid memory of the story hour. We'd go into the library, young kids, before we even started school. And there was like a small corner in the library there with windows, and they would draw the drapes on the windows, and it would be all dark. And the children's librarian would light a candle. And she was a clever person to think. That got everybody's attention, young children's attention to the flame of the candle, and everybody calmed down, and she would start telling stories. Wow.
That's kind of like the bell, but much more subtle and silent for classes.
Right.
That's interesting.
But where did it come from? I don't know. I mean, your grandmother was a influence in that respect. She would read us stories, bedtime stories at night, and you couldn't get out of the bed once you started the story. You were in for the night. But so stories and literature was again, it was I don't know, other than TV.
Yeah. Now, when you used to play in Franklin Park and all that, was it mainly playing games with friends, or was it more imagination? I'm the knight in this town, and I'm going to save the princess, something like that.
Well, we played a lot of street games. Gosh, I don't even remember the names of them. Hitting a ball against the steps, and catching it, and hide and go seek, and cops and robbers, and cowboys and Indians. All of we'd make the games up ourselves. Cowboys and Indians. There were no rules. You just
you just did it. Yeah.
Right. Almost like conducting a play or a show or something. Cops and robbers was the same thing. There were games like Relivio. You'd stand in line and somebody would tell you what you had to do, and you'd do it. I guess that was. It wasn't Relivio. Relivio was blindfold against a tree, and then everybody'd hide, and you have to go find them, sort of thing. But as far as my time up in Franklin Park, I remember I caught a rabbit up there one time, a wild rabbit, and I jumped on him and clutched him and brought him home and kept him as a pet until my parents told me I eventually had to get rid of him, so I brought him back to the park. So hopefully he made it okay.
Yeah. Did you like animals as pets and all that?
I did, yeah. We never had a dog. We always asked for a dog, but never got a dog. We had a cat. I had birds and the rabbits. I had 3 rabbits at one point. Yeah, I love animals. Sometimes I wish I had a dog, but I don't want the care of a dog.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
I love other people's dogs.
Oh, sure.
Wonderful.
Yeah, they're big responsibilities.
Oh, yeah.
Unless you want to commit, you really shouldn't, especially
Right.
for the dog's sake as well.
Right, exactly.
Now, how has your faith influenced you as a person and just your life? You said that you grew up in a very Catholic household, but obviously there's a point where the religion goes from family and the parents saying to the kids, "This is what we do," to
Right.
the actual the person making a decision. Okay, well, should I continue? Did you ever have that the doubts of, is Catholicism right? Should you continue, or was it kind of just a given, like you knew that it was true?
It's a good question. I think it's sort of current now to talk about doubt. The famous example is Mother Teresa, her great doubt that she was plagued with all her life. I don't know that I've had a great deal of doubt about the existence of God or God's love for me, or it's almost, I've always often said before, the way we were brought up in the faith it was almost as like breathing in and breathing out.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed to be a natural part of your existence or your being or your persona. That it's just, I think almost it comes from the my love of nature and that it's natural,
Right.
To believe in something bigger than I am.
Mm-hmm.
And the Christian message certainly is one of great value to society.
Did you have role models in the church, as in a priest or a deacon, that you really looked up to and really guided you?
I can't say that I had. I had nuns as teachers in grammar school and high school. And they often get a bad rap today for being so stern and so demanding and so forth. They weren't all. There were some who were very warm individuals, nurturing individuals. So I guess there are certainly people in my life who have served that role, but I couldn't name anyone specifically.
Mm-hmm. How was your relationship with your siblings evolved over your lifespan? Because you're all in your 80s. You're all very close. You see each other quite frequently.
Right.
Yeah, talk to me about how that's has it evolved, or has it kind of stayed the same over time?
No, I'd say it has evolved. As you grow older, you change. Your relationships change. My brother and I, we used to fight a lot growing up, but I think over the years we've developed more of a kinship or a loving relationship. Certainly with my 2 sisters, that has developed over the years. I think it's a natural development. What does St. Paul say? When you're a child, you act like a child, but now that you're an adult, you put away childish things. And that's
kind of
how it has developed. Yeah.
Yeah. How have your siblings helped you? Because you're the youngest of 4. I'm sure Vietnam anyway was, I'm sure, quite traumatizing is kind of overused, but difficult to deal with. And of course, I'm sure there have been plenty other moments in your life where you needed someone by your side to kind of help you and guide you in the right direction. How have they kind of done that?
Well, I think perhaps my sister Mary, my sister Sarah, left and joined the convent when I was in, I think, maybe the 6th grade, 5th or 6th grade. My sister Mary, it was almost like another mother figure. She was very, very understanding and a good person to go to for direction or guidance. So I think everybody in the family looked up to Mary as, as the second mother almost.
Yeah. Do you have specific memories of, say, I don't know, getting in trouble or having a difficult thing that you have to deal with and you go to her for direction?
Yeah, but I don't want to talk about it.
Okay. Sounds good. That is your right. Well, when did you get married?
74.
74.
Yeah.
How long did you know Aunt Marnie before you married?
Let's see.
Or how did you meet? I guess let's start there.
Oh, that's her favorite story.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. When we were growing up, when I was in high school, they were friendly with the group. Some of them were by that point, when we moved, in high school, we moved to West Roxbury, and I had several friends from high school, and they had a connection with people from Hyde Park, and it was a big group, and we used to party together and
together.
Oh,
were you
yeah.
Wild?
No. These were this was in the early '60s.
The innocent days.
Right.
Right.
And go places together and so forth. And I remember at one party, one of the girls had a party in her house, and I was going in or coming out or something, and I met this girl, and I knew who she was, I knew her brothers, and we said hello, and that was it. So years passed, I went to college, and then got drafted, and was in Vietnam. When I was coming home from Vietnam, this girl who had the party invited me. She said, "Oh, I'm going to a party. Monty Buckley is coming home from Germany, and they're having a welcome home party. Would you like to go with me?" I said, "Oh, sure." I wasn't thinking anything of it. We weren't, girlfriend and boyfriend or anything. So we went to the party, and who was there? Monty Buckley, and we had a wonderful time. We hit it off immediately. We were playing charades, I think.
Oh.
And we had a great, great time. So the party ended. On the way home, I was taking this other girl home, and I said, "By the way, do you have Monty's telephone number?" She said, "I do not." All right. So that was it. So I let it drop. I didn't pursue it. And 2 years later, this same girl was graduating from the New England Conservatory of Music, and she was having a recital, and she invited me to go to the recital, and they were having a party afterward, and she also invited Monty. So we met at the party, and then the rest is history. So that's how it happened. And Monty always said, "You didn't think to look in the white pages for my telephone number?" That was the days before cell phones, where you could actually look somebody's number up. But no.
Had you had relationships before then, like serious relationships, or was this kind of your first?
I don't know how serious. Yeah, there were other girls that I had dated. Yeah.
Was because how many siblings does she have?
Monty was from a family of 7 children.
7. What was it like to kind of enter that world when you first, like, okay, this is serious now, and then meeting the parents, meeting the siblings? I'm sure you probably knew some of the siblings already.
Oh, I did. Yeah, I knew
was
2 of her brothers, younger brothers. Yeah.
Was that kind of strange, kind of like being friends with them and then starting dating their sister, or was that kind of just natural?
Yeah, no, there was nothing strange. No. Yeah, it was a natural progression, I think. There were sort of pairings off in the group with various members of the group would marry each other. So, yeah, her brother, one brother, married another girl from the group. No, it seemed like a natural progression. It was almost. How do you meet people? Oh, well, at your parish or, at school or at your job. It was just a natural way to meet. There was no online dating at the time.
Oh, no. What do you think of that? What are your thoughts on online dating?
You know, initially I thought that, well, this is crazy, but it's a way to get to meet people and then to grow to know them.
Mm-hmm.
We've had, you know, nieces and nephews who have met their spouses online and very successful marriages. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's totally wrong or objectionable.
Mm-hmm.
It's the modern way of meeting people.
Right.
You know, we had you know, CYO dances and you know, all sorts of different ways of meeting people. And then of course it was the bars or the you know,
sure.
the cocktail lounges and so forth. And but so it's a new way of doing the same old thing, I think.
Mm-hmm. But do you think that the human connection of, you were in a friend group and you knew a person who knew a person, all that
Yeah,
stuff.
right.
Do you think the connection kind of from with that to swipe,
Yeah.
but just based on one picture? Do you think that's
Yeah, that's problematic, I would say. It's
Yeah.
No, as a way of meeting somebody face to face or in person, you
Mhm.
know, initially.
Yeah. Now, the online space I've been fascinated with all my life, basically, because I mean you kind of have to be at my
Right.
age. But even when I'm on social media or on different platforms, on my computer or on my phone, I get this feeling of dread inside me as I'm on these screens more and more. And of course, they're designed to be addictive. They're designed to keep going and going and going. What do you think okay, if you had to draw up, I don't know, a perfect life, not perfect life, but a perfect way of dealing with technology, what do you think that might be? Because again, you can fall into so many traps in that.
Yeah, I guess. Certainly that is all over the news today about young people and the addiction, the addictive nature of technology. Certainly there are countries are passing laws to govern the amount of time that an exposure that is given to
And age
young
gaps,
people.
ages as well. I think Massachusetts just passed or is about to pass a law.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I guess it's certainly an issue.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have any
Solution.
personal experience to make a judgment, you know, on that. But I can see how it can be very, very limiting, very internalizing, you know, your
The
life.
isolation.
Isolation.
Yeah.
And, of course, that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. But that's the thing. Like I'm trying to use the technology. Like technology's a tool, like
Right,
everything.
right.
You know, a hammer is used to hit a nail.
Right.
You don't use it to hit someone in the leg.
Yeah.
Technology can be a tool to communicate. It's just when that communication goes from, Facebook, for example. That was, oh, remember the friend we knew in high school. Oh, now we're connected with them. Okay, now let's meet up. Oh, live in the same town. Our kids go to the same soccer games. Okay, and then you reconnect like that. That was originally what social media was. And that still really is what it is. But it's just the matter of the way that you use it. I think that's the most important part. And kind of drive people. I think Pope Leo talked about this, that social media is a great tool. And he said it's wonderful that, I'm not quoting him directly, but it's wonderful that you can connect with different Catholics all around the world. But if you don't know any Catholics in your parish, then it's kind of,
Right.
it's bad. You should really kind of get out there in person more. Do you have a specific experience where you, obviously it wasn't from technology, or maybe it was, but where you felt isolated, you felt like you didn't belong, you had this did you ever have social anxiety in that kind of extreme sense?
No, I can't think of examples of it. Certainly, I remember in perhaps in college I had more of that experience. Yeah, I went to a very small Catholic high school, and everybody knew
Knew everyone
everybody
else.
else. Not that the college I went to was so huge, but it was more of on a local level in high school as opposed to a broader exposure in college. So I guess at that point maybe I started feeling less part of the group.
Right, exactly. How did you deal with that? Did you find groups that you could hang out with, or was it kind of more of a let me just power through this until after college?
I think that was powering through it. I should also say I was a commuter in college. I wasn't.
That would be worse.
My advice to any person, and I'm sure most young people today, go away to college and live the experience. Whereas I was commuting back and forth every day and working part-time to pay for college. So that didn't help.
Right.
Becoming part of a community. And because so many college students today have such great devotion to their alma mater that I didn't particularly develop that feeling.
Now, what did you major in college?
History.
History. What drew you to that as a major? Do you want to be a teacher?
No, I soon discovered I didn't want to be a teacher. I did student teaching, and I decided that wasn't for me. It was reading, I guess, and I loved reading history. And I particularly loved the scholarship involved in history. The historical method and the necessity for backing up your claims with facts. And, I always say that if a book has good footnotes, I love that. I like to get lost in the weeds of the footnotes, explaining a tangent that isn't addressed directly in the thesis of the author.
That sounds like my grandma telling me how exciting math is.
Oh yeah, she tried to convince me of that too. She did not succeed. Don't you find it a challenge?
It's like, yes.
Yeah,
but
too
also
much of
no.
Too much of one.
Right. What were your parents like?
Good question. My mother was, I would say, was a very lenient parent. My father was more distant. And coming from their background, men were not much involved in family life. That was mainly left to the women to run the household and the children and that sort of thing. We had an enormous amount of respect for both parents, particularly my mother. I don't know how they inculcated that in us. You would never want to do anything to offend them or to hurt them or have them disappointed in you.
Would you be afraid to talk back or kind of put up a fuss? No.
I remember one time, a crazy story, but
please tell it.
That's
why we're here.
Came home from school and we had book bags, that you carried over your shoulder, and green canvas bags. And I remember being in the house, coming in from school, and I was swinging my book bag over my head, and my mother stopped, and I hit her on the side of the head.
Oh my God!
Just grazed her head. I wanted to die.
Really?
Because that was something you just would never ever hurt a parent in that regard. So, but I mean, it was no big.
It was no big deal, but that shows how much
the awe.
Yeah, how much your mother meant to you. That even a little accident like that crippled you pretty much.
I remember hearing my mother and her siblings talk about their mother in Ireland, and with the highest awe they would speak of her. And I remember a cousin of mine who had been born in Ireland and knew my grandmother. We never met her. She had died a couple of years after I was born, and we had never met her. But we asked this cousin, well, what was she like? Because we heard that, the reverence that they talked about this woman. And she said, oh, you'd never cross her. And we were astounded. What do you mean? Would she get angry? Was she cross? Oh, no. She said she was just so good that you would never do anything to offend her.
Wow. I wonder where they got that from.
I wonder.
Because, how far does the family date back to Ireland?
Oh, gosh. It's unknown. Well,
Unknown,
they were
yeah.
there from eternity, I guess. I don't know. Of course, there's we've tried to trace back our lineage in Ireland, but it's difficult in that many of the records were lost during the Irish Rebellion. The post office was burnt and the records were destroyed. So, so that you can only go back so far in Irish genealogy, unless you were part of the establishment.
Yeah, unless you were, the king or queen or something like that. How do you think your opinion, or not opinion, but I guess view on, this is kind of a broad question, but on society has changed, or has it changed? Like, because we're all human beings, and human beings never really change very much in just how we operate, how we think, how we function, just in general. But I guess it's less of a human question and more of a society question, in a sense that, with improvements in technology, with improvements in communication, news, or civil rights, or whatever you want to talk about, information, there does seem to be this kind of disconnect that's been lost, in a sense that, obviously we're human beings and we need interaction and communicate, but it's America seems to be more divided than ever, but we're not at all. Not in the degree that people say, not Civil War level.
Right, certainly. That was the most divided period in our history.
Maybe if you want to count, like, right before America was formed, when we were debating on
the
Constitution,
the establishment
of the country.
Yeah, right. I think we're almost getting back to those difficult times, certainly with what's going on today, just the crassness of talk in the government.
And just also in people. Like the curse words are much more freely used now.
Right,
I find myself doing it sometimes, and I'm appalled, and I'm like thinking to myself, why am I doing this? And then I look around and see the environment that I'm in, and I'm like, oh, that's why.
Yeah, it's funny. We watched a movie, and of course I don't remember the title of it, recently, Monty and I, and it had to be the most immoral movie I have ever seen. It took place in London, and it was basically, to use a terrible term, a low-life section of society, and it was just murders and killings, and there was no redemption whatsoever. There was no truth and beauty and goodness at all. It was just one horrible situation after another.
No, like, moral of the story.
No.
It's just, here's a death.
Right.
Yeah.
Kill and eliminate people, and it wasn't that recent a film.
Really?
It must have been back in the 70s, maybe, and it was very disappointing. It left a very ugly taste. But anyway, I think we are on a downward slope.
Yeah. But then again, you lived through the late '60s, and I'm sure that was a pretty divided time with race riots and
Very
with
true, and sure, the
Vietnam
Vietnam
and,
War,
you know,
that was, but I don't know.
definitely seemed to be more violence back then. There seemed to be more mainstream violence back then anyway, with assassinations and with
Right, oh, God,
political riots and so on and so forth. But again, like you said, we're getting back to that a little bit now
Right.
with, um, violent protests, and they're not even protests, they're riots.
yeah. You're right.
And just again, just like you said, incivility toward different people, or uncivilians. I can't. But yeah, I mean, what was the harder point in time to live in? Not you personally, because of course, as you age and all that, and it depends on what you back then you were in Vietnam. But what do you, if you had to pick a time to live in, would it be the late '60s or would it be now?
Nothing like the present, I guess. No, I don't know. I would not want to go back, certainly. But it's difficult to watch the news every night, which we do,
Oh no,
and it's just one
horrible thing. after another.
catastrophe after another, it appears. you
Yeah.
know. Particularly with this war in Iran, it's just, you wonder, does anyone know what's going on? What is true?
Well,
You can hear a report on the situation on the NewsHour on GBH,
and then you go
and
to the
then
other stations.
read something in the Wall Street Journal. Wait a minute, which is true? Is there such a thing as the truth?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it just goes back to Pontius Pilate's question to Jesus:
What is
truth?
truth?
And it's just
Now it's your truth.
your truth or my truth. not
Yeah,
that truth.
that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's like, okay, what if your truth is that you're a psychopath and you're going to rule the world?
Right.
Or,
Right.
oh, my truth is that I'm the leader of the universe. Well, okay, well, no, but that's my truth.
You're right. I know. And how can you oppose that?
No, you can't, especially
Yeah.
when you're not. It's a cop out, because when you're not saying this is what it is, this is the truth, they have nothing to go back on.
Right.
You have nothing to say, saying, well, no, that's not actually true. Well, no, it's what I think.
Right.
Okay, then it's what you think, not what you think is true. Right? It could be what you think is true, but
Right.
it's interesting how words and phrases have kind of evolved over time, or new phrases have come up to mean. I mean, I think really your truth and my truth is really just, this is what I think and this is what I feel. But when you use the word truth,
That has to have a deeper meaning, a
Yeah.
bigger meaning.
Yes, words have meanings.
Right.
And,
Right.
You have to watch what you say, because they reveal a lot about what you think.
Right.
And even if, you're not the most articulate person in the world, you still have to watch what you say.
Right. Right.
And that's very interesting, actually. Wow.
How are we bringing this to an end?
I don't know.
I'm exhausted.
You're exhausted. Let's see, what time is it?
How long have we been at it?
Only about an hour.
Hour.
Yeah, only about an hour. Not that bad. Well, I guess to wrap up a few
Right.
questions, what have you seen in your life that's kind of changed perspectives on, no, scratch that question.
Yeah, right.
How has your faith gotten through your life, I guess, or gotten you through life?
Through the vicissitudes of life.
Yeah, because I mean, we live in a world that's fallen, and we need faith to kind of come back. We need religion to come back, help us back up off our feet.
I guess it has to be the person of Jesus Christ and his promises, is what he told us, that you believe in him and what he says, and what he says is true. I am the truth, the life. If you can accept that, then that is your, I think, guiding principle. That it has to be what we have been taught by Christ.
Mhm. How do you know that the Catholic faith is the true religion? Because
Well,
because Christians could say, "Oh, yeah, well, that's not what Jesus actually taught," or this or that, or they can throw a bunch of arguments back at you.
well, I guess from my love of history and reading history, I can see, where our beliefs came from, how it evolved and developed, as Cardinal Newman taught that the truths of our faith have evolved over time. I remember there was a fellow in our parish who was received into the church. He had already been baptized in a Protestant denomination, received into the church not this past Easter, but the Easter before. And I was interested to, find out what drew him to the Catholic faith. So we invited him and his wife to dinner. His wife did not convert, and she's still very, very much involved in his former parish, her current parish. And I was asking him, well, how did you come to believe in the Catholic Church? He said, I read myself into it. He read about, read the history of the church. And it's not all glorious history by any stretch of the imagination, but you can see a development of where all this came from,
The historical
right.
proof of the church and the development and all that. That's very interesting. Anyway, are you all set?
I'm all set.
You're all set. Perfect. Thank you so much, Uncle John.
Oh, all right. I hope it is of some value to you. I can't imagine anyone wanting to listen to me talk for an hour. And I wish you all the best with it.